This lesson is going to be about values. Not family values, but paint values. And what I mean by that is the difference between light and dark. And I don't know if you've ever taken a photography class or you've even taken an art class, you may have seen a value scale. And a value scale is a series of, from going from white to black, a series of gray increments that go in succession and gradually get darker as they go towards black. And sometimes there's 7, sometimes there's 8, sometimes there's 10. And it's a very confusing thing to have to think, well, is this a 6 value or a 7 value? There's a much simpler way, and that is to think about value 2 values at a time. That's it. So we're talking about light and dark. And I want to demonstrate for you today. On my computer, I took the liberty of colorizing a ball for you just so that we can do something in color and not just in black and white. I want it to apply more to painting. We're not going to do that much painting in black and white now, are we? Principles still stay the same. So I want to discuss value in this ball. I'm just going to paint this ball by way of demonstration. So I made this ball kind of a minty green. So the first thing we want to do, and I have it roughly sketched out here on my canvas just to get us started. I'm not going to make it perfect. I'm not going to make a perfect circle or anything like that. I'm not going to worry about the details too much, but I want to make a point and demonstrate to you. Okay, so the first thing we have to ask ourselves is, what is the color of this ball? I said I made it green. Okay, let's take a look at that. We have 2 sides. The light is shining on this ball. That's the only way we know it's a ball or it has form, is because of light and dark. It's not all just one color. So let's mix up a color for the light side and mix up a color for the dark side and start there. So to begin with, I'm just going to mix my light-sided color. Just get some green and come into my white and get that basically an average. If you squint your eyes at this ball and just get the average color of that side, and I think it probably has a little bit more yellow in it. Something like that will do. Now, if that's the median color of the light side, what's the dark side? Well, let's start with this color and darken it up. Let's add a little more color into our dark area so it has a little bit of saturation, but we'll also add some black so we can make it darker. Remember, black desaturates, so that's why I want to add some color into the dark side. And that's approximately what I'm going to go after. So if we squint our eyes, if we break this ball down into two areas, a light area and a dark area, it's going to look something like this. It looks to me like the dark side of this. And I generally always start with my darks first. Paint dark to light. The dark is going to come around in this fashion. Something like this. And I'm not going to worry about staying in my lines so much or going outside of my lines so much. There's the dark side of the ball. And now let's put in the light side of the ball. And so to begin with, we really only have to think about 2 things. Where is the light side Where is the dark side? That sounds very Star Wars-ish. Star Wars-like, doesn't it? So I have now something that has a little bit of form. And just for kicks, I'm going to put in the shadow. The shadow is kind of a little bit warmer. Not pure black, but and I'm putting in the shadow in. For now, I'm just worrying about one value in the shadow. So the shadow is 1 degree of darkness for now. Let's call that good for now. Okay, so we've put in our 2 values on this ball. Now, the first thing you're going to notice when you look at this compared with my reference piece is that the edge here in the middle is not that hard. There's not a hard division of an edge. We'll cover this in another lesson, but for now, suffice it to say, let's just go ahead and take care of that issue and let's soften that edge. And we can soften this edge just by blending it together a little bit with our brush, just gently coming across there and softening the edge. But we still now have 2 values. Let's take a look at the dark value of the ball. And as we look at that, we see there's two values inside the dark. So there's 2 values in the dark. There's a lighter dark and a darker dark. So we can see where that lighter dark goes. We can just use a little bit of our lighter color green and we can put that in. And what that is, that's light that's bouncing back up off the table into the underneath side of our ball. So let's just put in that second value. And obviously it's not as light as the color on the other side of the ball, but it's not as dark as the bit down the middle that comes down in through here. So now we've created 2 values in the dark side of our ball. We have a dark dark and a light dark. Now, let's do the same thing on the light side of our ball. Let's break that down into 2 values. Is there 2 values that we can see in here? And of course there is. There's a light side. Sometimes that's referred to as a highlight. Now this isn't a very bright, a specular highlight, but it's a highlight nonetheless. So the highlight side, the very light side of that ball, we can paint. And the great thing is that since this oil paint is obviously still wet, we'll just use straight white and go into this and create our highlight that way. And we can build it up. Let's go in there and just keep adding. Oh, actually, we're going to have to add a lot of white. But now we've got the light side of the ball now has 2 values. It has a light and a dark light. But the dark light is still lighter than anything in the dark part of the ball. And we can just continue to build that up. But now we've created a nice little sphere and now I'm looking at this as even another value, a third value, but I don't have to worry about my third value until I've already taken care of my first two. And so if I work from dark to light, I can just keep working my way up and creating that and softening those edges as I go to the degree that I want. So that's the lesson on value. Think about value. Instead of thinking about 10 different values, think about each section or object that you're painting and think about, how can I break this down first into two values, light and dark. Squint your eyes, pick the average of the dark area and paint that in. Then mix a color for the average of the light area, paint that in. Then you have two values. Then you go to your dark value and you look at that and you say, is there more values? Is there a more distinction of values inside the dark? Can I break this down into two areas? So you break your dark into two areas, break your light into two areas. Then you go back, look at those areas within the areas and say, is there further distinction of value? And if there is, then paint that too. But you only have to deal with two at a time. And it makes it very simple when we think about values that way. So now it's time for you to try. There's an activity that you can download and try. And so what I'd like you to do is to download the color mixing guide, so you'll be able to refer to that. And then also the activity, which is to paint this sphere with these two with the two values at a time, just the way I just did it. So I want you to give it a try and then come back and join me for the next lesson.